Welcome back to the Rural Opportunities podcast. In this episode, I talked to four wonderful ladies from Young Agrarians. Young Agrarians is a farmer-to-farmer educational resource network for new and young ecological, organic, and regenerative farmers in Canada. We talk about regenerative agriculture, farm transitions, the apprenticeship program, first-generation farmers, and so much more. This is a group that I have been a part of for many years, and they were instrumental in encouraging me to start my own flower farm. I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did, and be sure to check out Young Agrarians after the episode. Okay, welcome to the Rural Opportunities podcast with the Young Agrarians. Glad to have four ladies here. So Dana, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thanks, Megan. We're excited to be here. My name's Dana Penright, and I'm the Prairies Program Manager for Young Agrarians, and I was behind bringing Young Agrarians to Alberta.
Yay, that's amazing. And Alex?
Everybody, my name is Alex, and I am currently the e-learning coordinator for Young Agrarians, and I'm located in Alberta, so I also help kind of organize some of the Alberta events that we have here. And yeah, I'm just really excited to meet lots of new and aspiring farmers.
Awesome. And Sarah?
Hi, I'm Sarah. I am the Manitoba and Saskatchewan Apprenticeship Coordinator, recruited in from Manitoba, and yeah, happy to be here.
Awesome. And Kolby?
Hi, I'm Kolby. I'm the Alberta Apprenticeship Coordinator, helping Sarah manage the apprenticeship program across the prairies. Yeah,
Awesome.
Thanks for having us, Megan.
Absolutely. Okay, so for those who might not know about Young Agrarians, Dana, can you just explain what it is, how it started, and why it's important?
Sure. So Young Agrarians started in BC in 2012, and it came out of some conversations at the National Farmers Union Youth Group, where that group is really focused on kind of policy and advocacy. But what they were seeing was that there was a lot of first generation farmers who weren't really connected into the farming community yet. And they also needed some support on training. And so Sarah Dent and Sean Dory were behind creating this space where new farmers could get together and create these farmer-to-farmer connections. They could meet with their community and find resources, and yeah, really just kind of get to know one another, and in a lot of ways, like reweave that social network that has kept our agricultural communities alive. And then so I was part of a group of farmers from Alberta that went out to go and see one of these events that they hosted. And they were hosting a mixer that was that kind of networking happening. And one of the things that they do is an introduction circle. And in that introduction circle, they ask people to share any needs or opportunities. And in the one in BC we were at, there was this girl that kind of shyly raised her hand and was like, I'm a new farmer and I've got seed coming on Friday, and I have borrowed a tractor, but I don't know how to drive it. And I just don't know what I'm doing. And somebody across the circle, who she didn't know, just kind of popped up and said, I'll come over and help you. And so it was this like real tangible, like addressing needs, getting farmers started. And we saw that and just thought we need to bring this to Alberta. So in 2015, we hosted our first event similar to that in Red Deer, Alberta.
Awesome. Yeah, I will say from attending Young Agrarian Mixers, it is really helpful, and everybody is just so willing to jump in and help or give advice if you need. Everybody's willing to share anything, which is pretty awesome.
Totally.
And it seems like over the last couple of years, Young Agrarians has expanded quite quickly, even into Saskatchewan and Manitoba. Can you guys talk a little bit about that? I don't know who's best to answer that one.
Sarah, you should answer that. You're the Manitoba person.
All right. Well, I met Dana at a NFU convention, I don't know, maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. And we got talking about Young Agrarians, and I was really passionate about yeah, just like opportunities for people wanting to get into like small scale diversified farms on the prairies, because often when you go to find opportunities there in BC or Quebec and I'm from the prairies and I wanted to do this kind of farming on the prairies, so I was getting stoked with Dana about that. And then luckily to us and Young Agrarians, Dana moved to Manitoba, and she's awesome at bringing more job opportunities to people. And so she reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to help bring this apprenticeship program. And I think it's great. It's a great opportunity. And I've worked in Saskatchewan and Manitoba. And so I kind of have a little bit of a network, and we asked some farmers to be mentors in the program, and people signed up, and yeah, great. So it's new this year. 2021 is the first year that the apprenticeship program will be in Manitoba and Saskatchewan. And I think previous to that, it's been more like a few mixers. We did a couple mixers last winter, one in Manitoba, one in Saskatchewan. And that actually, like, we made a little bit of a community through that, and lots of those people that attended those mixers are now involved in the mentorship program, which is awesome.
That's so amazing. So how many farms do you have in Manitoba on the mentorship program?
Manitoba, there's 6. Saskatchewan, there's 6. And Alberta, there's 12, Kolby? 11.
11.
Nice. And in BC?
The apprenticeship program doesn't run in the same way in BC as in Alberta. There's a business mentorship program there. So they have farmers that are actually starting farm enterprises, and they're mentoring under an established farmer there.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a little bit of a different format than the prairies program.
Okay. Interesting. And you guys have kind of already been touching on this, but what are the main things that Young Agrarians helps farmers with? Maybe Alex, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so I think Young Agrarians offers a couple of really important things. But first and foremost, it's a community of people that are doing the same thing as you, and don't think you're crazy for wanting to start your own farm. That's a pretty big thing, actually. I don't know, you come to a Young Agrarians event and you see other people around you that, grew up in the city and then went and started their own farm and are having a great time of it and building this beautiful community around them. It's pretty inspirational, and just provides kind of some hope to people who want to have tangible action towards improving their kind of ecological footprint by stewarding land, or by working towards feeding their community and providing food justice for their community. So it's just a beautiful network of like-minded people, and I think that's one of the most important things. But beyond that, we also really try and focus on a lot of farmer-to-farmer learning, and actually sharing of this knowledge that people have acquired in their farming careers, whether they're a couple years into it or they're 40 or 50 years into it. So through the apprenticeship program, there's a lot of opportunities to really, get your hands dirty, work on a farm, see what it's like day in and day out. And that's really hard for people to find if they don't live in a farming community. And so, just providing that opportunity to learn about what it's like to be a farmer, I think is really important. And then recently, we also started a program called the Business Bootcamp. And the goal with that is to provide people the support and kind of peer network to help write a business plan to actually start their own farm. So once they've worked on a farm, been part of the apprenticeship program, they kind of know what they want to do in their farming journey. Then the Business Bootcamp is there to support people as they write their business plan and come up with a plan for how they actually want to realize this farm of their dreams.
Absolutely. You guys kind of take everybody through all stages of it. For those new to the world of regenerative agriculture, that's what Young Agrarians focuses on a lot. Can you talk about that and why it's so important to Young Agrarians? Kolby, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, definitely. So there are many different definitions of regenerative agriculture and what that actually means and how it's practiced on the ground. But I think we see it most simply as farming in such a way that the farming ecosystem is actually regenerating in its health and in its functioning. So becoming more biodiverse and having the soil improve in health over time rather than degenerating. So, I mean, this is important because the ability to harvest food in perpetuity requires the soil to be able to sustain growing that food. There's the saying, as above, so below. So if the soil is degenerating in its health, it cannot support growing healthy food. And because the soil is our lifeline that is tying, all eaters, and of course all farmers to the land, it cannot continue giving if we keep growing food in extractive ways. So we want to focus on this regenerative farming movement that regenerates the soils and therefore all of our communities.
Mm-hmm. Young Agrarians, I think, attracts more small-scale farmers. Is that your target? And do big farmers kind of have a role in it? Dana, maybe you can answer that one.
Sure. So when I came back from BC, that was my question, was like, who are the regenerative and ecological farmers of the prairies? And to me, that question needs to be answered both in terms of just, who's showing up, but also in terms of the ecology of the landscape and the context of the farms that are here. And so in the prairies, we have larger farms. And to me, how I answered that question was, I think that the regenerative farms on the prairies are really like the people who are doing like holistic management, livestock production with planned rotational grazing, and organic grain farming and fit in there. But there's also like non-organic grain farmers that are doing regenerative stuff too. So, we're kind of discovering who those people are. But what I really wanted to figure out was like, how do we take people who, like, we're seeing more and more first generation farmers, as I said before. So there was a survey done in 2015, and 68% of the farmers, of aspiring farmers who responded, didn't come from a farming background. So, those are people from a wide diversity of backgrounds. But, you think of the urban person who starts a garden and gets really excited about growing food. Maybe they start selling food to their friends. Maybe they start a small market garden. Market gardens are great, I should say, and we need them. And but how do we also get people who can manage larger landscapes and in a regenerative way? So how do we take those people like that and get them to be able to manage like a herd of 100 cows, or manage a few hundred acres of grain? And that's really where the apprenticeship program came in, of trying to build those skills alongside regenerative farms that already exist, and give people the experience of what it's like to be on that scale of land.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that most new farmers start out like with a market garden or something because it's easier to get a smaller piece of land?
Maybe, and Alex might be good at answering this one too. I think it's because they can do it in their backyard, right? Like you can do it on your porch, right? So it's and that excitement about being like, oh, I grew a tomato and I can eat it, is what really gets people started. But Alex is from a urban background, and she got interested in farming, so maybe she should share her story.
Okay, yeah, I'd love that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, growing food in urban centers is kind of what got me hooked. I kind of accidentally joined the community garden at the University of Calgary, and just like fell in love with the idea of growing food and then hanging out with really awesome people who are passionate about the environment and actually helping to like work towards positive impacts for a lot of these kind of negative trends that we're hearing about in the news. And so that kind of combination of things got me to kind of dive deeper and deeper into the farming world. So it's almost like a little bit of a gateway drug. And now, like, I don't want to start a market garden because that's not kind of what I'm passionate about. But that kind of first foray of having a supportive community and seeing what it's actually like to like plant a seed and watch it grow, and understanding different things that are happening in the different seasons, that's not necessarily how a lot of people think in urban centers, because we don't need to really think about, you know, what do you do in February to start to have food in August is not really a kind of way of thinking. And so having that kind of paradigm shift can help people to understand the food system as a whole. And then hopefully through different apprenticeships or farm tours or reading and webinars and all those different things, they kind of find their place within the food system and within the farming system of how they, their skills and their passions can most align with achieving the goals that you kind of, or at least I was first exposed to in a community garden setting.
That's really cool. I like that. Yeah, I think gardening is the gateway drug to farming, and once you start, it's really hard to stop.
Totally.
So from your different pieces of the world, what is the most exciting thing that you have seen during the pandemic? I'll start with Kolby.
Yeah, sure. So people are buying chest freezers, which is really indicative that priorities around food and sourcing food and quantities of food is changing within the communities. And a lot of the farmers in our network have run out of farm products because their communities are approaching them, and they have more customers than before who have tuned into I guess the fragility of the predominant food system, and how it's not just by magic that food ends up on the grocery store shelves. It's coming from somewhere, and if the method through which that food arrives, or if that somewhere is having problems, then we're not going to have food stocks. So a lot of our farmers have had this, the pleasant problem of having an inundation of people wanting food from nearby.
Mm-hmm. I joined the chest freezer club this year, and I ordered it like 7 months before I actually got it because they were on back order. So yeah, we're seeing that here too. And there has been quite a few farms around here who, like, even if they sold at the farmer's market before, they changed to selling whole or half cows for the freezer, and they're sold out right away. So it's really cool to see that.
Yeah, amazing.
Mm-hmm. Sarah, how about you?
Well, I run a market garden with my partner, and we certainly see, like, we never seen a decrease in sales, and it was last year, it wasn't hard to sell out, and Travis is running a microgreen CSA with root vegetables, so yep, that's growing and growing, and lots of people are tapping in. And last spring, when it first happened, I had lots of friends reaching out, asking to come and work with us, or asking for tips on how to convert their backyard into a vegetable shenanigan production site. And and then seeds have been selling out like crazy, and which is really, really cool to see. Yeah,
it's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Alex, how about you?
Yeah, I don't know if I have much more to add to that. Right now I live in the city, and so what I've seen the most kind of just on the ground is so many people starting up gardens, whether they're in their balconies or in their front yards, and just a lot of excitement about being able to, see how food is grown, and also just kind of see this kind of excitement and fascination with watching things around you grow and increase in life, like kind of focusing more on local ecology and local the kind of the world right outside of our doorstep, I think is pretty exciting too.
Mm-hmm, for sure. And Dana, how about you?
I'll maybe give a plug for our UMAP. We have this map on our website that you can find resources and opportunities right in your area. And at the start of the pandemic, we started a garden share category within that. So if you have space that you would like food grown on, but you don't want to grow it, you can post your yard lot up there. Or if you're looking for some, you can go and post on there too. But for me, I think the other thing that I've seen is around an appreciation for a slower lifestyle. I know we're all kind of struggling through it a little bit because it is isolating, and we want to be back to normal, obviously. But there's lots of people that have contacted us about wanting to find land, wanting to get out of the city, and I think that kind of we've been forced into this like slower pace of life, and some farms, like I feel really lucky that during this we're already out on a farm, so we're already isolated. We're pretty used to it, and I just feel really like appreciative that during this, I can go outside and go for a long walk and not worry about seeing anybody. So I think that people are reflecting on that, and reflecting on how there's these qualities of rural lifestyles, or just a different way of thinking in general, even if it's not around rural lifestyles, of a different way of living. And I hope that kind of sticks after the pandemic.
Yeah, totally. It's been interesting to see the shift of people's mindsets of realizing where their food comes from and how it's grown, and wanting to get back to that and getting back to the land. And if that's one thing that we can take out of the pandemic, I think that's a good thing.
I guess one other thing that we've noticed kind of within the Young Agrarians programming is the number of people signing up for the apprenticeship program and for the business boot camp has just like skyrocketed. So there's a lot of excitement about being part of these programs that help support people as they become farmers.
That's awesome. So kind of going with that, is the number of people wanting to farm increasing?
I think so. I think the trend in Canada is that the number of farmers under 35, Dana, correct me if I'm wrong, is increasing. Within the apprenticeship program bubble, it's really easy to think it is because of just this influx of applications. And not just on the aspiring farmers, but also mentor farmers. They can apply to the program as well to be involved as a mentor farm, and that number has also gone up quite a bit too.
That's nice. Kolby, can you talk a little bit more about the apprenticeship program and how that works, and like if you want to be a farm that is a mentor farm, and talk about if you are an aspiring farmer, how the apprenticeship program is beneficial?
Yeah, you bet. So it is prairie wide now, as Dana and Sarah have mentioned. And we do have 23 mentor farms on the mentor roster, which is really exciting. And they are, a large variety of different kinds of farms. So from market gardening exclusively to mixed farms of market gardening with livestock. We have farmers raising, I think, everything from like yaks and sheep to cows, chickens, pigs, buffalo, bison, pardon me, and some fruit farmers, organic grain. Yeah, so there are, like, whatever your interest is, there's probably somebody in the program that is able to mentor in that. If on the apprentice side, the benefits to exploring the possibility of farming as a career and vocation, I think this is a really good sort of stepping into that option and having the opportunity to explore that, and if it fits for you and your values and lifestyle. One of the things that the apprentices say they love the most about the program is that they have a cohort of other aspiring farmers that are a very supportive network as they're navigating their own farming journey. So they have people who really understand both the beauty and the sometimes extreme difficulty of jumping into farming life and what that entails. With the program, they also get to be introduced to the network, to the Young Agrarians network in all the provinces now. And a non-pandemic years that involves attending, other farm tours, getting introduced to the larger farming community, coming to conferences, attending potlucks. And we're hoping that will get to resume as part of a normal part of the program. There's also some more structured learning elements of the program, like there's some online learning opportunities, and they get to sit down with their mentor and create their own learning plan for the farm, kind of like a curriculum. So there's all those things about becoming an apprentice, and Sarah and I are also, like, we serve as sort of third party people to check in with on both the mentor and the apprentice side, and we can smooth things over if there are bumps along the way. On the mentor side of things, we get to take on a lot of the administrative work, which is nice for them. We get some information for them, and then we get to promote their position through our network and give them access to resources and mentorship training. So for either the apprentices or the mentors, they can apply to us. And actually, we extended the deadline for the apprentices this year. So if people are interested in applying to the program, they have until February 15th. So both mentors and apprentices can visit the YA website, awesome. And on the apprenticeship page are all the links and information they need to learn more and apply if they want.
That's awesome. Yeah, apprenticeship, I think, is an important thing, because just diving into farming is a really huge thing, and to get your toes wet and see what it's like, and in all the weather conditions and pests and all that, it's nice to have somebody who knows what they're doing a little bit, and for you to learn under them for sure.
And also to add that every mentor farm is paying either a stipend or a wage to the apprentices. So it's a paid apprenticeship, which is also rare to find.
Yeah, super valuable. On the number of people that are choosing to farm, I know you guys have addressed this a little bit in your social media, but is Black, Indigenous, people of color, are they also joining?
Yeah. We, as I talked about before, like, we're seeing people come from all kinds of backgrounds. And one of the things that we're working towards is, really trying to reflect the community that's interested in the imagery of young agrarians. We want people who want to grow food to see themselves in the network, where they don't often, in other spaces of agriculture, they often don't see themselves. I think there's different, potentially different pathways that people come into it. On the Indigenous side of things, we see people more coming into it from like a food security, food justice, food dignity kind of side of things, which is really important. And it's important for all of us to be learning about that perspective and including that perspective in it. We've really taken a big focus on this in Young Agrarians, and it's part of our conversations almost at all of our meetings of, how can we make this more inclusive? How can we, use language that fits with people of different backgrounds, and just make it more welcoming and open to people. I was speaking with somebody of color last week, and she was just talking about how she apprenticed somewhere not in BC, and she was just sharing how she was how that felt for her. And those kinds of stories are really important for people of color to hear, but also the majority white population to hear too, of what that's like, so that we can create relationships and support that learning from each other, and just, it's, more diversity is more exciting, it's more fun, it's more often thoughtful, and all of those kinds of things. We want to bring all of that into our network.
Yeah, farming is for everyone and food is for everyone, right? So it's important to include everyone in that.
I'd also say that kind of to that, having a greater diversity of people on the landscape, I think will diversify the things that are grown on the landscape as well. Like, just different cultures have different traditions of growing different kinds of foods that a lot of the farms that are growing food right now, haven't even heard of these vegetables or haven't even heard of these grains. And so having that greater diversity is just really exciting, and I think makes for a more resilient food system and a more culturally appropriate food system as well.
Absolutely. Are they facing more barriers than someone else just joining farming?
Yeah, I would say that they definitely are a lot, like largely because, I mean, some of it is because they're not, it's hard to navigate the farming sector if you don't know it. I mean, it's if you've grown up with it, you've heard of the Ministry of Agriculture and like different things. At farm fuel, for example, is something that comes to mind for me. It's like you kind of get that concept of, okay, there's purple fuel, and that's a thing that farmers get. But lots of people that don't come from farming wouldn't even think of that, so how do you navigate that? How do you just like work within those systems, I think are the really hard parts of it. And then just like the perception of it is that we don't often think of a farmer as a person of color, which is really unfortunate. So we just really need to work to break those things down, and whenever we can, is to lift those people up, show examples. I mean, one of the really cool examples of farming in Alberta is the Black community that came up from Oklahoma and started farming in north of Edmonton, and they had like their own community and were successful farmers for a while. And I mean, as many farmers during that time suffered from the economics of farming, and they ended up kind of moving towards urban centers. But that was like a big part of our culture and our history that everybody should know about.
And I think if you read into how the Indigenous story of farming and how when they were moved onto the reserves, they were told to farm, but then almost just were set up to be unsuccessful at it through the Indian Act and all that. And just reading about it is heartbreaking, and like no wonder that Indigenous people don't want to get into farming, maybe, or that is a barrier to get into farming, to have that in your past. And there's a lot of stuff that goes with that.
I think too it's important to like we like the mixer, the Columbia Basin mixer, just had a couple Indigenous land stewards speaking about Indigenous land stewardship, and I think that it's important to recognize that food growing doesn't necessarily have to be under the scope of farming, and that like acknowledging that there's different types of food growing, and like the colonial settler way of farming isn't necessarily like the ideal or for everybody, and also like how can we revitalize like Indigenous foodways and support Indigenous people in that, and share the land.
One experience that I had on my flower farm this year, I just had so much hemp nettle growing, and I didn't have it last year. It just kind of came out of nowhere with it being a wet year. And so I was selling hemp nettle to this lady in Wetaskiwin who made tea out of it. And I didn't know this, but she works for the city of Wetaskiwin in the communications department. And so she had made some hemp nettle tea and then took it to the Muskogee elders when she had a meeting with them. And they were blown away and so excited to have hemp nettle tea. And it made me realize that like it's something that I wasn't going to use, but it's something that they value. And even just if they want some, to invite them on to where I'm farming, because I personally don't drink hemp nettle tea, but if they want some and that's something that's important to them, then why not share it?
Totally. And I think it's like what we need to also do um is start to develop our confidence in that relationship building. I think that's a really great example, Megan, because it's like um you see the opportunity there, and then okay, now it's like, okay, how do you make that happen? And we had the girls from Métis in Space, the other podcast, come speak at one of our mixers, and they just, the whole thing was just, they gave a great history, first of all, of uh, just the injustices that were put upon Indigenous people with the Indian Act and farming, but they also just talked so much about relationship and how we're in relationship with the land, how we're in relationship with each other, and how the answer to a lot of this is building those relationships. And so it's not easy, just getting the confidence to just call up the band office near you and be like, hey, I'm interested in this stuff. But we need to kind of put ourselves out there and be a bit vulnerable to make that relationship start, just like any relationship.
Mm-hmm. And it opens a door for us too, because like hemp nettle is one of their traditional plants, which I wasn't really aware of. And like maybe there's more on the farm and I don't know about them and they can teach me about that. And that's a cool thing too. So it goes both ways. Is there any other trends that you guys see with people joining farming?
Well, the apprenticeship program has loads of international applicants. I don't know.
Mm.
I don't know if people are, and it seems like lots of people have food growing experience, and so maybe people just want to experience it in Canada. But that's an immediate thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, and the whole space of like newcomer farmers, I think is slowly starting to grow. Yeah, I think I don't know if this answers your question, but I think one of the big challenges that we see is that it's like we're just constantly facing a transition. So, like we work with we're starting to work in the area of land access and supporting transition of land in between generations for families and like outside of families as well. Um, but I think one of the trends, I guess, that I see is that we're having to transition the land at the same time as we're transitioning practices. So, I mean, I don't like to think of regenerative agriculture as a trend. To me, it's like something that we just have to go to. It's like an imperative. But I'm seeing younger folks. I mean, in both like the regenerative spaces and in conventional spaces, really just seeing the need to farm in a new way. And so it just really, this whole like trying to transition the business and the practices is like really, really difficult. And I think that that's kind of like the big challenge that we have on the horizon that we need to figure out in order to make land transition successful.
Mm. Is that because the younger generations are trying to implement other practices?
I think, yeah, like they're wanting to get into regenerative. They're in tuned with the like global impacts of it and addressing climate change. And they're really motivated by those kind of ecological factors. And the older generation, I don't think it's that they're not motivated by them. It's that they have, come out of like a farming system that has really driven down the margins from when they started farming to now. Um, the 80s was really bad with super high interest rates. Like my in-laws that I farm with, like they had interest rates of 18% at that time. Um, and so they're like, I think their background is that they're like financially nervous to take any risks of like changing practices. And they're also like towards the end of their career. So they're like
Wow.
not in a phase where they're gonna like be like, oh, we should switch to organic, but the new generation is coming in with all these ideas. So just trying to navigate through that and help people to on both sides to kind of understand each other's worries and manage expectations is really needed.
Yeah.
I would also say that because access to land and capital is a huge barrier for entering farmers, that young farmers are having to be quite creative with how they access land or how farm transition actually works. And a lot of the time it won't be done by private sale, because just the cost of land and the business and infrastructure and equipment is an insurmountable barrier to many young farmers. And so how these young folks come onto the farm and start working on the land without owning it is a big question for many. And we're seeing a lot of very creative relationships on how that can be done that is fair for the retiring farmers and creates access for the new farmers.
Can you talk a little bit more about the land matching program that Young Agrarian does? How does that work? Is having land the biggest barrier for people getting into farming?
Yeah, Alex, do you want to field that one?
Yeah, I was just thinking that. So Young Agrarians in BC has like a formal land matching program, and it's funded by the provincial government there. And basically they have land matchers in the 5 kind of rough regions of BC. And these land matchers essentially work as kind of like a matchmaker between land seekers and landowners. And so they're kind of the go-between to help land seekers become what the term is like enterprise ready. So essentially ready to jump in and start a farm as soon as they have access to land. And then on the landowner side, they basically help to help the landowners to figure out what kind of farmer they're looking for, what kind of navigating those expectations and needs and all that different elements. And then the land matcher works to find good matches between landowners and land seekers, and actually helps to write out the terms of the lease and make sure that the agreement has like a strong legal structure to protect both sides, and make sure that the farming relationship or the land relationship can be really successful. And so it's pretty exciting because in BC, the program is relatively new, but they've already matched more than 100 different pieces of land, and I think more than 6,000 acres or something along those lines. So it's very much in demand in BC, and it's proving to be a very successful model because it's so customized and individualized. Like every context, every relationship is so completely different that you really need that kind of one-on-one support to navigate those relationships and those leases. So I think that kind of land access piece is a really important first step in making sure that these kind of bigger transitions of like transitioning an entire farm to the next generation can actually happen. So what they're finding is that, you can start, you kind of start out small. So maybe you're an entering farmer and you lease a couple of acres on an existing farm and start kind of working with the relationship, getting to know each other. Transition doesn't happen overnight. And so you need these long periods of time to make sure that you understand the needs of the other party. You work through those awkward conversations about what's going to happen to the farm when someone passes or, a relationship breaks up. So you need that kind of time and space to develop that relationship. And so these leases, that are maybe 1 or 2 years end up becoming much longer leases, or actually end up becoming a transition plan. And so that kind of slowly working on the relationship is a really big part of land access. And I think, it is really important to consider moving forward.
And I would think that there would be more land seekers than landowners wanting someone to be on their land. Is that true?
I think it really depends on the region. There's places around urban centers where often there's a lot more land seekers than land owners. And that's typically because, around large urban centers, there's a large market and people sometimes just want to stay in the city and farm on weekends, as they're holding down their full-time job. They want to ease into farming, so they're doing it as a part-time gig on the weekends or evenings and things. And so I would say in those areas, there's more demand, but if you're serious about wanting to find land, like there is so much land available right now. I think there's a statistic that in the next 10 years, I think 70% of farms are going to have to undergo transition as the elder farmers retire and move away from farming. So that is a huge amount of land that needs to be transferred to the next generation. So we need all the new farmers that we can get.
Mm-hmm. And it's not always their kids that want to take it over.
Exactly.
Yeah, these days rarely, actually.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I think that's tied up in that same thing I was talking about with the 80s, where it's like, and the sad fact is that in many occasions, the older generation has told their kids not to come back to the farm. And
Right.
that's like kind of maybe a simplified version of it. There's also a lot of people just kids going to the city and becoming professionals, and so it just doesn't fit, right? Too. The other thing I heard is that the age is an interesting thing, where people now have had their kids when they're older, and so the kids aren't ready to farm. So there's like a bigger kind of gap there where it's like they aren't quite old enough to start farming when the parents are ready to retire.
That is another interesting one. So in my mind, the land matching program would offer opportunity to those farmers who may not have had a chance to farm if they had to buy their land. Are you guys seeing that too?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's where the creativity is coming in terms of the land ownership of, can you lease that land to them for a while? Is there, the cooperatives is another example of people trying to test out, like, is there a way that the community can own the land and rent it to a farmer starting out? All kinds of creativity is happening, and more needs to happen in that space, and we need to be sharing stories and figuring out, what actually works.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually Young Agrarians, the BC team has put together a land transition toolkit for like non-family farm transition. And there's some really, really exciting case stories in that toolkit that exemplify just that, like the creativity that is needed to pass along farming to the next generation.
Yeah, absolutely. It was at one of the Young Agrarians mixers. For some reason, when I got the idea of the flower farm in my head, I was thinking I need to buy land. Like, how am I going to do this? And then I just thought of our really good family friends. They have a grain farm. And Erin Ricks, I think Kolby, you know Erin.
Yeah.
She had done a market garden on a piece of land on their farm. And she had moved away and is doing other cool things. But I was like, I wonder if they're using it for anything and if I would be able to start flower farming there. And they're like, yeah, totally. So basically, I just give them jam and some veggies and flowers, and that's how we go from there.
Megan, I didn't know you were
awesome.
on the Rick's farm. Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah, it is pretty awesome. So I've known them my whole life, and I get to use their equipment. Last year I used some of their manure, and it just makes it so much easier, honestly, to have that there. And it is another community kind of on that farm too, because if I'm kind of discouraged about what's going on, then Graham gives me a pep talk, and then off we go. I'm like, oh yeah, I can do this. And yeah, that part's important too.
Totally. I think every new farmer needs a leader. And there's some really great people in the elder agrarian community, I think, that are so great at that. You can just call up and they're like, you're doing awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And just to be there for you. Yeah, you need some enablers.
Yeah.
Just behind you to keep you going sometimes. So I think I've asked most of my questions. The last one I wanted to ask was just, I guess, something that you're excited about with Young Agrarian, something you're looking forward to. Dana, do you want to start?
Oh man, that's a big question. I'm really, hopeful that we can get some of that land access work happening in Alberta, and I'm really excited about that. I think that we are ready for it. We'll be releasing a land access guide for Alberta in the next little bit here. But hopefully we can start following that up with those one-on-one supports for people to actually get out there. For me, like, I'm just so excited when somebody like actually starts farming, and just like you, Megan, it's just like they did it.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. So yeah, that's what I'm excited about. I'm also excited about someday being able to have a mixer again in person.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
Alex, what are you most excited about?
I think right now I am really excited about the potential for creating community and learning online for farmers. That's kind of a new area that Young Agrarians is kind of dove right into, and we're really seeing a lot of positive reception to that kind of learning. It doesn't replace meeting in person or anything like that, but there's kind of a time and a space for it, and being able to connect with really incredible farmers, in Manitoba. When you live in northern Alberta, that's, these people you would never be able to meet in person, but yet even in an online space, you have this like incredible connection because you get each other. I don't know, you get where you're coming from. And so I'm just pretty excited to be able to hopefully connect people across the prairies and into BC and everything like that, and inspire folks to dive into farming.
That is a cool opportunity that comes out of the pandemic as well. Sarah, what are you most excited for?
Yeah, I second what Dana and Alex both said, but I'm stoked that it's Young Agrarians has programming now in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, and I'm excited to see all these apprentices, the future apprentices, and hopefully, help with more access for them to actually become farmers. And I think also Young Agrarians has great potential to be a great ally organization with Indigenous food sovereignty, and I'm stoked. Yeah, I'm stoked to be a part of it, and I think that access to land is a big thing, especially on the prairies, and just to see what has happened in BC with Young Agrarians, I'm really excited for that to come more into the prairies.
For sure.
Yeah. Kolby?
Yeah, all of that. I feel and I'm seeing a lot of momentum in a lot of different directions. And if you pardon the farming analogy, to me this feels like a lot of these are seeds that have been planted, and we are cultivating and nurturing relationships for moving in this, a direction that includes more justice in all of these aspects of growing food and relationships, and to kind of see what the flywheel is going to bring about, and what that's going to look like is very exciting. And that's also very vague of an answer, but more specifically, last year the apprenticeship program in Alberta was much smaller, but a lot of those apprentices are starting their own farming enterprises and even their own farms this year. And to see what they're going to do in this year, and looking up to this new larger cohort of apprentices to imagine how many acres are going to be stewarded well, in coming years. That's something I'm really excited to see.
That's awesome. So for anybody who's listening to this and they're like, oh, this is exciting, I need to be a part of it, how can they find you? Where do they connect with you?
YoungAgrarians.org. Is that right?
Yeah, you can find us on the website. So it's youngagrarians.org. But I would also encourage you to just reach out to one of us too. We're happy to jump on the phone and talk through your ideas. And I love those kinds of phone calls. And we can kind of direct you to some of the programming that we have going on too. If you're like ready to get out in the field, apply for the apprenticeship program. And if you're needing that business advice, apply for the business boot camp. And if you're interested in land, just reach out to us and we'll kind of help with that one too. So hopefully that's enough pathways for you to get in.
One more.
Okay.
If you want to
Yeah.
sign up for the Young Agrarians newsletter,
Right.
you can just visit the website and sign yourself up and keep on top of, we'll keep you posted for any online and hopefully in-person events coming around the corner.
And our social media. So we're all over Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And we also have Young Agrarians groups on Facebook for the different provinces. So join those groups. There's also often some good discussions happening there, and you can find local stuff happening too.
For sure. Awesome.
And all of our emails are on the website.
Yay. Okay, and we can tag them in the notes too. And I will say too that I was attending Young Agrarians mixers before I even had the thought of a flower farm. I just liked what you guys were doing, and you guys let me come hang out, and it was awesome. So
I remember when you came up to me and you're like, I'm going to start a flower farm. And it was
yeah. Yeah, and then everybody was super encouraging because I was kind of doubting myself at the beginning too, and then I came to the mixer and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it even if it's really small. And then it happened.
Yeah, and it's so great. We're so proud of what you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What's the name of your farm?
Prairie Heart Farm Florals.
Amazing. Sounds like an awesome collaborative project. It's
pretty awesome. Going into year 3, I feel like it's gonna be good. I think you gotta get a couple years under you, and then it's always gonna be learning, and there's gonna be challenges, but I think this is gonna be a good year.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we sure hope so, Megan. Thanks for creating more beauty in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of the best job. Awesome. Well, it's so good to talk to you guys.
Oh, you too. Thanks so much for having us, Megan.
Yeah.
And thanks for the awesome podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep warm.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah, have a good week.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Rural Opportunities podcast. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to follow us on Spotify and wherever you listen to podcasts. We appreciate your support, and remember, at the CRE, it happens here.